perfect stability, max handling, and the furthest range possible on a rapid frame fusion. Iterative Loop is hands down the most competitive fusion rifle we got in Destiny 2 Lightfall, and while this rapid fire can be a one-size-fits-all, I went through nearly every perk combination to find out which ones optimize every fusion stat to its full potential depending on what playstyle you use and what subclass you run. The results are unbelievable, and in this video, we're gonna break down exactly how to craft the perfect iterative loop for you. I already thought iterative loop was good in my first impressions review, but at this point I'm completely blown away. I'm addicted to rapid fire fusions again, and the rapid fire fusion buff isn't even here yet. I did a lot of research for this in-depth guide and I came out with 5 solid ways to craft iterative loop. We've got one for every subclass: Arc, Void, Strand, Stasis, and Solar. I think if you're running the generic role that's out there, you're going to be really surprised by what else it can do. These options are so good that I had to craft a second fusion just so I could keep different enhanced perks on another version depending on how I wanted to play. I'm gonna lay them all out there so you can decide which ones are worth crafting for you. I say 5 ways to craft it, but really there are 6, as there is one version you'll want for PvE. We're gonna fly through this part to get to PvP because for PvE it really is a one-size-fits-all for that craft. That said, if you have heard this Volt Shot info before, stick with me because I've got new science on charge times and the best way to get the most damage. It gets weird. No doubt Iterative Loop has big fusion competition in PvE with Chill Clip, Riptide, and Royal Executioner, but Iterative Loop's Volt Shot damage is off the charts good. I need you to remember this: Iterative Loop is a boss damage fusion. It's not an ad clear fusion. You can use it for that too, but it's not the primary function, as there are better things out there for that. Simply stated, Volt Shot applies different jolt ticking damage on an enemy depending on what type of weapon applied it, and fusions are the best for jolt damage on bosses outside of Two-Tailed Fox, and even then, I'd run this legendary weapon to apply a high damage jolt so that I can leave room for other exotic and heavy options. For using Volt Shot, you're going to want a super fast reload speed, so Compulsive Reloader is the no-brainer perk to go along with Volt Shot. At the top of the mag, you'll get plus 50 reload stat and a 0.95 times reload duration multiplier to make the reload even faster. So the loop is to shoot an ad, reload with Compulsive Reloader, then fire at the boss. Okay, key info coming up. How you want to run your barrel will be up to you. I like Arrowhead Break to control the weapon a bit better, but for the battery and the masterwork, you're going to want specific things to get the most out of your jolt damage. Jolt applied from Volt Shot is buffed by whatever your weapon is buffed by, so being in an Empowering Rift or having Surge mods, all these things will help. Turns out, Liquid Coils also increases the damage of the jolt applied from Volt Shot, so you'll want to run that for the higher constant jolt damage. Then for the masterwork, okay, you're not gonna believe me on this. You're going to want a charge time masterwork because for whatever reason, while Liquid Coils will buff your jolt, a charge time masterwork does not decrease the damage of the jolt. So you've nearly evened out your charge time, but you're doing more damage. I never thought I'd be recommending Liquid Coils and a charge time masterwork together. It's usually a terrible idea for the stat perks you could have had there, but for this very specific situation, to get the most out of your Volt Shot boss damage, you're gonna want Liquid Coils and a charge time masterwork in PvE. Throw on that boss spec too, that's what you'll be using this for, to get the jolt going and then swap to your heavy. I originally thought I'd like Wise and Rebuke better with Volt Shot, but this thing is so fast and so easy to use and has so much ammo, it's just the clear winner even if it does occasionally take 2 shots for tougher ads. So, final PvE build: Charge Time Masterwork, Arrowhead Break, Liquid Coils, Compulsive Reloader, and Volt Shot with a boss spec. I can't believe it, but the science shows it's the optimal way to run it for PvE. Before we get into the 5 builds for PvP, remember to subscribe to the channel if you haven't. In less than a year, we've gone from a nothing channel to almost 20,000 subscribers, and I'd love for you to be a part of things as the journey continues. Okay, on to PvP, where I think Iterative Loop shines even more, which is crazy because we've already established it's a top 3 PvE fusion with everything just described. And here it goes popping off in PvP too. Like I said, 5 ways to craft it, 1 for every subclass, and I've got them all time-stamped into sections. Definitely recommend checking out each one as there is some mind-blowing stuff here. Okay, there is a key foundation that we start at for most of these builds, and then we tweak it for each version. There are 2 crafts that swap that up, but I'll let you know when we change it. So, let's go over this foundation, the 5 crafts, and then we'll talk about the trace rockets because we've got all the research and secrets for how those work as well. The main key to making Iterative Loop feel super solid is the recoil direction. You'll probably find this to be true on most rapid fire frames as their recoil direction stat is just awful, and it's no different here. I tried running just extended barrel and a counterbalance mod, just arrowhead brake without a counterbalance mod, but it wasn't until I used both arrowhead brake and the counterbalance mod to bring my recoil direction to 92 that the fusion came alive for me. Building off of that, nearly all the crafted versions I have to recommend include projection fuse and a range masterwork. Now, you're probably thinking I'm one of those guys who only invests in range on a fusion, and well, you'd be right. But hold on, rapid fire frames are the one archetype I do value stability in. So we're still going to put plenty of stability into this iterative loop, just wait. Range masterwork, arrowhead brake, projection fuse, and a counterbalance mod, and then we'll add under pressure. This is the baseline fusion foundation for many of the builds because it gives an undeniably solid feel no matter what else you do to it. Under pressure adds up to 30 stability. For the enhanced version, D2 Foundry estimates it's up to 35 stability. So that puts us at 65 stability with 43 range and that 92 recoil direction. A very impressive base to build something on. On to the first craft. This is the Kickstart iterative loop you've all seen people talking about, but we're gonna push it to be the best it can be for arc and solar builds, depending on which version of this craft you use. To start, we're using our arrowhead, counterbalance, projection fuse, range masterwork, and under pressure foundation, and putting Kickstart in the 4th column. When you slide and fire your fusion, Kickstart gives you a 20% damage boost and makes your fusion a 0.8 times charge time scaler. Pretty good. Brings your charge time to 0.4 seconds and currently lets you 6 bolt up to 8 resil. Then after the fusion buff, this will let you 6 bolt any Resilience Guardian. That's great. I think the pitfall here is that Kickstart makes you play stupid. You have to intentionally run for 1.5 seconds with the fusion out and then slide for it to activate. You can't be swapping around your weapons, it must be intentional. For some, like Juggernaut and Teus Ward Titans, this is no big deal. They do it all the time for their Jug Shield and Antaeus anyways, but for other players, that 1.5 seconds is engagement time I could be using to fire my primary. More importantly, the strength of a rapid fire frame is its speed, and if I'm intentionally having to do something for 1.5 seconds and then use the 0.4 second charge time, it takes away a full second of strategic movements and decision making if the opponent doesn't play into the spot that I think they will. Just think about that for a second. Yes, you're lowering your charge time by a minuscule amount, but you're adding 1.5 seconds of things you have to do. Every other craft I have for this fusion can turn on a dime and make those split-second decisions that rapid-fire fusions are known for. This build cannot. With that reasoning out of the way, if you are a go-hard W key warrior and want to spec this thing out the absolute best it can be, there is another perk option with the incoming buff that I need to tell you about. I personally think the perk foundation we laid out previously is the most consistent combination, but you'll soon be able to craft with accelerated coils and a charge time masterwork for Kickstart without any damage drawbacks. Currently, if you swap projection fuse and the range masterwork out for some charge time options, you'll lose the 6 bolt elimination option as it will only 6 bolt up to 3 resil. However, after the fusion damage buff, you'll be able to run all charge time perks and still get the 6 bolt against any resilience level. That is kind of wild. So this is the go fast modification to the Kickstart craft, with the range masterwork and projection fuse being the main role. Now onto the super stable void craft for iterative loop. You use the same foundation as before, arrowhead brake with a counterbalance mod, range masterwork, projection fuse, and under pressure, but now we add elemental capacitor. Elemental capacitor does something different depending on what subclass you're running, and on void, it gives you plus 20 stability. This is one of the perks it's also worth enhancing because the enhanced version gives you 5 extra stability on top of the 20 from the normal version. So that puts us at a total of 90 stability on your last shot in the magazine, with elemental capacitor and under pressure working together on a void subclass, all while keeping your projection fuse battery and range masterwork to give you some decent range as well. This craft on Iterative Loop is so clean. It feels like any opponent that gets within 15 meters of you is for sure a goner. If you can keep the enemy right outside the distance their shotgun can reach, you are going to feel unstoppable. I'll go out on a limb and say it's slightly better than Zealous Reward, and once the damage buff is here, you'll be landing those 7 bolt eliminations no matter the resilience level 2. No need for high impact reserves, you won't even need it. I highly recommend this build to my Void players out there, and I much prefer it to the Kickstart build because it adds that extra layer of stability to my fusion that can turn on a dime rather than having to be running and sliding to get all the benefits. On to the next craft. This one is for my Stasis players. This craft for Iterative Loop lets you milk a little more range out of the fusion by using elemental capacitor on Stasis to supply the better recoil direction, allowing you to run extended barrel instead of arrowhead break. Outside of extended barrel, we're gonna keep every perk from the Void build, the counterbalance mod, range masterwork, projection fuse, enhanced under pressure, and enhanced elemental capacitor. So if you crafted these enhanced perks for Void, but you wanna try out this on Stasis, it's still easy to do that because the cost to change barrels is so low. Now, running extended barrel instead of arrowhead puts you at 53 range, 10 above the Void build, while having even better recoil direction at 97 thanks to extended barrel, counterbalance, and enhanced elemental capacitor on Stasis all working together. You'll still have up to plus 30 stability and extra accuracy from under pressure, creating an all-around solid fusion rifle for hitting slightly deeper shots. We're talking only half meters of distance more at this point, but every bit of range counts when you need that to land a burst before they close the gap with a shotgun. Especially on this Stasis build where you have better recoil direction than you would on any other build with arrowhead break. So it's a win-win for Stasis on Iterative Loop. I had a blast running it in Trials and Iron Banner. I could feel the difference in the slight range boost and better recoil direction, and it's a high recommendation for me. So much so that I'm really torn between the Stasis Iterative Loop, the Void Iterative Loop, and the Strand one I'm about to tell you about. Now, this craft can be used for any grenade heavy build, and I'll explain that, but for specifically Strand, this Iterative Loop is the craziest thing I've ever seen on a rapid fusion rifle. A 19 meter one burst while maintaining 100 handling with a 0.5 second charge time and no kills required. I'll admit right away, this craft is not the safest way to play. I think it comes with a lot of strings attached, but this was the one craft for Iterative Loop that had my jaw on the floor after I tried it out. I can't believe the range you can hit. The night I discovered it, tested it, and tried it out in real game modes, I literally could not stop thinking about it. I'm talking lying in bed thinking about the build and what game modes it would be most useful for. So, here it is. Forget everything you know about Iterative Loop. You have to let go of everything I just said and everything any other Destiny content creator has said. This build is about pushing the range to the absolute limits and letting aim assist take over to connect your shots. I'm not even sure it's possible on mouse and keyboard. Y'all are gonna have to let me know how it works because I recognize it might be heavily dependent on controller reticle friction and how it interacts with range and aim assist. So, forget recoil direction, forget stability, we're investing it all into range and aim assist, and you need both to make it work. We're going full bore for the barrel, that adds 15 range, projection fuse for another plus 10, and range masterwork for another plus 10, and instead of under pressure, we're going well-rounded in the third column. What? Lego, what are you doing? Under pressure is the way to connect your shots on a rapid fire fusion rifle. Look, I totally get it. But that only works if you are in range, and we need to push that range further. Well-rounded is a perk that can stack its benefits. It gives you plus 10 range, stability, and handling when it's activated, and on a second stack, you have a total of plus 20 range, stability, and handling. If you have the enhanced version, it pushes it slightly further to plus 27 of those stats. Plus 27 range, stability, and handling. Oh, and I left out one of the best parts. The perk lasts for 15 seconds. Why aren't more people running this? Well, let's talk about how to activate it. Well-Rounded is procced by either using your grenade or hitting an opponent with a powered melee attack. It used to be, this didn't happen a whole lot. When the perk was first introduced, you could glitch it with charge grenades and then cancel the charge grenade, but they patched that, and this perk kind of faded amongst other options like Under Pressure. But now we've got Strand. Strand grapple activates Well-Rounded. Yes, the grapple that is free on a tangle. Yes, the grapple that hunters can spawn a tangle for and use to get their grapple completely refunded. It can be used to activate Well-Rounded ×2 for free. Even if you're not on Hunter, remember that Well-Rounded also procs on powered melee hits. So, you could use some of your 3 Warlock and Titan melees that you carry to activate Well-Rounded fully. But I've got something better for you. The Strand melee grapple, that is completely free energy-wise, counts as a powered melee hit. That means that on any class, you can do a simple grapple into grapple melee and have Well-Rounded ×2 ready to go for 15 seconds afterwards. And it gets even better. Your weapon with Well-Rounded does not even have to be out for the perk to activate. If you had your primary out when you grappled around the map or got a grapple melee off, you can swap to your Well-Rounded Iterative Loop and you'll have plus 27 range, stability, and handling waiting for you. This huge stat boost puts your full bore, range masterwork, and projection fuse Iterative Loop at 82 range while maintaining 44 stability and 71 handling. That's an unheard of 18.26 meters before damage fall off even begins, which means I was able to push it to a 19 meter one burst even with some damage fall off. That is precision and high impact category levels of range. And you guessed it, we're not even done yet. While you can use everything I've talked about so far with a grenade and melee heavy build, Strand is definitely the easiest to get Well-Rounded ×2 going for free. So let's double down on that because there is perfect synergy with some particular Strand fragments. Most of you remember that the fragment of Ascent gives you plus 30 airborne effectiveness and reloads your weapon, but it also gives plus 30 handling, plus 40 reload speed, and a 0.925 times reload duration multiplier to your weapon for 15 seconds. Just like Well-Rounded's 15-second duration. And also just like Well-Rounded, Fragment of Ascent is activated when you use your grenade ability. It is perfect synergy. So if we add in the Ascent fragment, which activates right alongside Well-Rounded, we're at a total of 84 range, 44 stability, 100 handling, and 88 reload speed with the speedy reload duration multiplier. It is one of the most exciting fusion builds I feel like I've ever put together, and it works like a dream. It's still difficult to control the bolts without the recoil direction stat of the other Iterative Loop crafts, and the stability is not near as forgiving, but it ranges like no other rapid fire fusion that hasn't been sunset in Destiny 2. 18.26 meters before damage drop off. For context, Cartesian Coordinate with its 17 zoom and max range is still at 17 meters for damage drop off. So to have this range on a regular 15 zoom rapid is crazy. I will say, due to the lack of recoil direction control and stability, you must run as many targeting mods as possible for the aim assist to do work with the range you have. Initially, I could not come close to even hitting an 18-meter shot with this setup, and then I threw on a targeting weapon mod with 3 helmet arc targeting mods, which boosts my total aim assist to around 59, and it was a consistent 18-meter kill after that. 59 aim assist is right there with Cartesian Coordinate's 60 aim assist, so that makes sense why that improved the feel so much given how much I love Cartesian. Okay, let's finish out this Strand craft because there's one last thing here. Elemental Capacitor won't do you much good on this build. I know it would be plus 25 airborne effectiveness on Strand, and you'll also have plus 30 airborne effectiveness from the Ascent fragment, but it's honestly not worth it. It will never feel reliable in the air no matter how many stats you throw at it. In my opinion, you're just trying to make the fusion do something it shouldn't. Maybe if you're a floaty warlock and you've got a build down, it's possible, but for the most part, don't do this. What you can do, and is immensely beneficial, is run Demolitionist. I know the Ascent fragment is already reloading your fusion, but getting a kill with a special weapon that has demo will refill 22% of your grenade energy. So say you just use your grapple for Well-Rounded and all the other stats we just went over, but you went across the map and don't have access to your tangle point anymore. Now when you get a kill with your cracked out stats fusion, it will regen a huge chunk of your grenade energy. If you're running enhanced demo, that regen on your grenade is boosted to 32%. Stack this with the Strand fragment of generation, which also generates grenade energy each time you damage an enemy, and you're on your way to a very fast grapple turnaround time. I want to point out that for hunters in particular, if you use the new exotic helmet, the Facade, you'll be given woven mail with flinch resistance for 10 seconds on top of your crafted iterative loop. That will help you bring the well-rounded build to a whole new level on top of demo, because Fragment of Transmutation will spawn a new tangle when you get a kill with this juice fusion while you have woven mail. You can then use the new tangle to refresh your woven mail and well-rounded ×2 at the same time. And then you can even grab it, throw it, and grapple to it to get to your next destination. It's such a fun gameplay loop. I just can't get enough of it. And this is why I crafted a whole new iterative loop, because I love the consistency of the Void and Stasis builds, but I crave the gameplay loop, range handling, and damage resistance of this Strand build. Full bore, projection fuse, range masterwork, enhanced well-rounded, and demolitionist with a weapon targeting mod and as many helmet targeting mods as you can muster. The highest of recommends to those feeling brave. It's not easy, but my gosh, it's fun. Alright, one final way to craft iterative loop. I was particularly thinking of my solar grenade players with Alhem cars, but really any player can make use of it regardless of grenades. Roll the build back to the original foundation with arrowhead, counterbalance, range masterwork, and projection fuse with under pressure. And then in the fourth column, we'll add adrenaline junkie. Adrenaline Junkie can add 3 options to your build. The one most people think of is a damage buff after you get a grenade kill, which is totally still valid here. If you get a grenade kill, you'll get that 33.3% damage buff for 4.5 seconds, which lets you go from 7 bolt kills to 5 bolting up to 6 resil. If you got Radiant during the encounter or just have Surge ×3, then you'll be 5 bolting any resilience on top of Adrenaline Junkie ×5. But that's just one benefit of Adrenaline Junkie. You've also got the option to activate the first level of the perk, Adrenaline Junkie ×1, by simply getting a kill. If you picked up an orb after that first kill and got your surges rolling, Surge ×3 on top of Adrenaline Junkie ×1 will let you 6 bolt up to 7 resil. Or if you don't use any surge mods and just run Radiant, Radiant plus Adrenaline Junkie ×1 will 6 bolt any resilience. Think of it like Golden Tricorn or Rampage. This part of the perk lasts just as long as if you got a grenade kill, 4.5 seconds, but it only requires a weapon kill. Keep in mind, either weapon or grenade kills, the perk will last a little bit longer at 5 seconds if you use the enhanced version of the perk. Finally, the last adrenaline bonus, and the one I often forget about, is that you gain an estimated 20 handling by proccing Adrenaline Junkie. So with this iterative loop on top of our super stable under pressure foundation, Adrenaline Junkie can bump your handling from 62 to 82, and on a kill gives us 6 bolt options, and on a grenade kill gives us 5 bolt options. That's just as good as many of the Kickstart damage buff options. So if you don't like sliding or being forced into that 1.5 seconds of running that Kickstart requires, Adrenaline Junkie is another option you may want to check out, particularly for grenade enthusiasts and solar players. Also, don't forget about the tracer rockets. Iterative Loop has an intrinsic trait called Nanotech Tracer Rockets that fires tracer rockets after consecutive shots that have connected from the fusion rifle. The tracer rocket does 14 impact damage and 15 explosive damage. I actually thought it was 2 rockets when I first saw it, but it's just 1 rocket doing 2 separate damage numbers. This tracer rocket auto tracks and can sometimes even hit targets you weren't aiming at if your primary target is destroyed or there's another target that is closer to you. I've heard rumors this proc's based off of how much damage you do, but it's actually based off of your magazine size. For most weapons, it fires after 45% of your magazine is fired and hits your target. And this seems to be the case for the fusion rifle, as your rocket will fire on your 3rd shot that connects in a row. The perk also says it must be consecutive shots, but I've timed it out to about 7 seconds between shots, so it doesn't have to be that consecutive. And you can also reload in between shots. You just can't miss or wait too long. Now this may seem silly on a special weapon in PvP, when you do have 3 shots to give, and well, it's not that often, but in clutch moments when it does happen, like in this 1v3 competitive match I had, it's pretty awesome. The tracer rocket can be just enough to reach out and finish someone just outside of range for your fusion rifle. On this clip, I was so confused on what happened when I got the kill. I thought the kill from the fusion rifle was just delayed, but no. It was the tracer rocket on the third shot of my fusion, reaching around the corner and finishing the target. So it does happen sometimes, and I wanted y'all to have the info for it. This tracer rocket will be much more useful in my deep dive round robin review coming up. Yes, the one-shot hand cannon exists, but on Iterative Loop, it can be a pretty hilarious minigame for some outrageous stuff, and something to keep in your back pocket if you're ever in a 1v3. So, a total of 6 different ways to craft Iterative Loop, 1 for PvE and 5 for PvP that line up perfectly with each element. I've got them each timestamped in the description so you can jump back and review one that stood out to you the most. The Void, Stasis, and Strand builds are definitely my favorites, and I have a hard time figuring out what's my top pick. 19 meters with Strand is ridiculous, and the Stasis one hits further than the Void while keeping under pressure, but the Void one is just so consistent that it's hard to ignore. I've got all of them listed in my Discord along with the crafting guides for other fusion rifles. This has been Lego Flash. Until next time, GG.